Hey everybody, Simon Dixon here. So I wanted to give a quick summary of the 20-point plan that was meant to be a 21-point plan, but obviously in the publishing of it, 1 point got missed, which is the plan that quote unquote has been attributed to Trump. And if anyone's a long-term Bitcoin Hard Talk listener, they'll know that this is a repackaging of the 20-year-old Arab plan in order to have a Middle East that is under regional control. And any long-term listeners of Bitcoin Hard Talk will know that I've been telling you that a plan that will lead to the liberation of Palestine, it won't be a free Palestine, but it will be a Palestine as part of a Levant that will vassalize the entire Levant region, including Israel, has been my prediction, under the effective transition and management of the Gulf Cooperation Council countries, the GCC. And I believe that this is the major shift we are witnessing in the world. And I've always said that it's possible to have peace in the Middle East after Sykes-Picot, which was when the colonizers, the French colonizers, the English colonizers, and then later the American, when they took over the British Empire after World War II in a post-World War II Bretton Woods system, that peace would be possible if you could have a normalized between Iran and Saudi Arabia, which were deliberately pitted against each other because in Sykes-Picot, the British Empire split up the region to have tensions and divide and conquer after the Ottoman Empire. The second requirement was to resolve the Palestinian cause, and obviously the British Empire did a deal with the Zionists in order to have a settler colonial illegal settlement project in order to destabilize the region and ensure that the Arabs could never unify around their oil and force them onto the petrodollar system in order to prop up the demand for the dollar after the World War II Bretton Woods system. And so Israel was a continual force of disruption. And then obviously Saudi Arabia normalized in order to negotiate a deal with the petrodollar, and Iran resisted by funding groups to resist against Israeli occupation in various territories, whether it be Yemen with the Houthis, whether it be Palestine with the PLO that later elected Hamas as a destabilization campaign in order to make sure that Palestine could never be liberated. And so they created lots of divide and conquer tension there. And also other regions like Hezbollah, that was a resistance against Israeli occupation of Lebanon. And obviously everything that happened with Iraq and Syria as well, which recently is moving towards a resolution. So we've seen that everything on the chessboard on the map is changing rapidly. And so if you resolved the Palestinian cause, then that would be the second requirement for peace in the Middle East. The third requirement, I've always said, is a US exit. So a game needs to be set up by which the US stops using the Middle East as a destabilization campaign to prop up the dollar via the petrodollar, and uses Israel as its proxy in order to always destabilize the region. And so if you can ever have a situation where the US military industrial complex stops backing the forever war model that Israel always antagonizes, and replace it with a deal where the financial industrial complex faction of the proof of weapons network actually profits from a stable region, which is what I believe Saudi Arabia and the GCC have been negotiating, then all you need to do is combine these three forces together and you will have massive changes in the region. And I believe all three are happening right now. And one of those requirements, obviously, China brokered the normalization between Iran and Saudi Arabia. That led to the GCC aligning with BRICS and creating the de-dollarization movement that has now meant that approximately 30% of the petrodollar is now priced in foreign currencies rather than just the dollar. So now we're having a plan submitted, which is the resolution of the Palestinian cause. It's being called a Trump plan, but anyone that's been watching BitcoinHardTalk won't be surprised with it, and they also know it's not Trump's plan. There was negotiations between the GCC, the military-industrial complex of the proof of weapons network in the US, and the financial-industrial complex. And October the 7th was a reset of the chessboard that I believe the majority of the regional players knew about. And Israel essentially had until October the 7th to complete the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians or be faced with the situation that we're facing today. That is my speculation based upon following the money. So we're now having a plan submitted, which is a 21-step plan. It ended up a 20-point plan, and it's identical to the 20-year Arab plan that was put forward. And Saudi Arabia always said that they would not normalize with Israel until the Palestinian cause is resolved. And so this is a movement in that direction. And at the same time, we're witnessing the US retreat. We saw deals in Iraq. We saw placeholder leadership put in Syria. And now we're seeing negotiations between the GCC, who now actually have a board seat on BlackRock via Saudi Arabia and their interests, and is actually the GCC are all shareholders in BlackRock. So they've been able to use reverse colonization from the petrodollar in order to buy their decolonization process. And so that's what I think we're witnessing right now. And so what I wanted to do is Bitcoin Hard Talk episode 100 is going to go deep into this by deconstructing the speech between Netanyahu and Trump, where they announced the 20-point plan. Now, the 21st point that was missing, which obviously is leverage to the military-industrial complex in case anything goes wrong in this process, is how I interpret it, is held out, which is the movement towards Palestinian recognition, which I believe is inevitable, predictable, and guaranteed if we can get through this process, which is the whole purpose of building a stabilization plan, where essentially the GCC buy their way to ending the forever war model that America has always inflicted upon the region. So with that in mind, what I wanted to do is just give you an overview of the 20 points so that we can break it down and understand how the proof of weapons network works, how these financial weapons of mass destruction works. And in Bitcoin Hard Talk episode 100, I'm going to go deep into the speech and reinterpret it from you from the perspective of the proof of weapons network, so that in the end, you can understand how we are moving to a multipolar world order, and how that multipolar world order will usher in the era of currency wars. And in the era of currency wars, it's all about how you protect yourself with neutral fixed supply currencies, and how Bitcoin and gold might be utilized by the proof of weapons network, and how you can protect yourself by understanding and getting ahead and following the money and understanding the wider geopolitical issues. So we're going to break it down. And I'm just going to give you an AI summary now of the 20-point plan that was called the Trump plan that can usher in one of the biggest shifts that we will ever witness in our lifetime. So over to the AI summary.
Okay, let's get into this. We're doing a deep dive today on, well, a really significant document, President Trump's 20-point plan aimed at ending the war in Gaza.
That's right. The full text was published by Al Jazeera just back on September 29th, 2025.
And our goal here is really just to quickly unpack it. The White House is making a pretty big claim, saying this plan could stop the fighting immediately if both sides sign on.
which is huge considering the terrible human cost, over 66,000 Palestinian deaths reported. So yeah, what's actually in this proposal?
It seems like they've tried to structure it quite logically.
Yeah, it kind of falls into three main baskets. First, there's the immediate stuff, the ceasefire and exchanges, then the long-term security picture, and finally, future governance and rebuilding.
And the initial reactions were immediate, too.
Right. Israeli PM Netanyahu apparently accepted it, but interestingly, Hamas officials like Mahmoud Mardawi were quoted saying they hadn't actually seen a written version yet, so a bit of a disconnect there maybe.
Okay, so let's focus on that first part, the immediate actions. If this deal is accepted, how fast does things happen? The ceasefire, the exchanges?
It's designed to be incredibly fast. The war ends immediately once accepted. And then within 72 hours of Israel publicly saying yes, all hostages alive, and sadly, the deceased have to be returned.
72 hours, wow. That's rapid.
It's meant to be. Shut down the violence. Deal with the immediate trauma.
And on the other side of that exchange, what does Israel have to do regarding prisoners?
It's a significant release. We're talking 250 prisoners serving life sentences, plus another 1,700 Gazans who were detained after October 7th, 2023.
Okay.
And the plan specifically says this group must include all women and children detained in that period. There's even a point about remains a ratio of 15 deceased Gazans for every Israeli captive's remains returned.
Very specific. So, assuming that initial phase works, the plan moves into the longer-term vision for Gaza. It talks about a de-radicalized, terror-free zone. What does that actually mean on the ground?
Well, it means complete demilitarization. Point 13 is pretty blunt. All military infrastructure, terror tunnels, weapons facilities destroyed, and crucially, not rebuilt.
And how do they plan to enforce that? Governance seems key here.
Exactly. This is where it gets quite novel. Gaza would shift to a temporary transitional government. It's described as a technocratic, apolitical Palestinian committee working alongside international experts.
Technocratic meaning?
Yeah.
Focused on practical skills, not politics.
Precisely. People chosen for their expertise in running things, rebuilding, not representing existing factions, and overseeing all this is a brand new body, the Board of Peace.
Right, the Board of Peace. Chaired by President Trump himself and involves others like Tony Blair. That's unusual.
It is. It sets up this international oversight layer led by a former U.S. president, essentially managing the transition. And to handle security during this period, there's an international stabilization force, the ISF.
And ISF, okay, what's their job?
Their main role seems to be training. They'll train up vetted Palestinian police forces to handle internal security long-term, making sure, that demilitarization holds.
And Israel's role? The plan says no occupation, no annexation. But when do their forces leave?
Well, the IDF withdrawal isn't just automatic. It's tied to specific milestones. Things like hitting demilitarization targets, meeting security standards agreed with the ISF and guarantor nations. So withdrawal depends on progress.
Got it. Conditional withdrawal. Now, what about Hamas fighters themselves? What does the plan say happens to them?
It's not just about elimination. Point 6 offers amnesty, but it's conditional. Only for those who explicitly commit to peaceful coexistence and give up their weapons.
And if they don't want to do that?
If they refuse but want to leave Gaza, the plan says they'll be given safe passage to other countries willing to take them. It's a kind of managed exit strategy for those unwilling to comply.
Alongside all this political and security restructuring, there's a big economic piece too, right? A Trump development plan.
Yes. Point 10 mentions convening experts to create a plan to rebuild Gaza's economy, make it vibrant. There's even talk in point 11 of potentially setting up a special economic zone, maybe with preferential access.
Interesting. But what if Hamas just says no or drags its feet? Does the whole thing collapse?
Not necessarily. Point 17 anticipates that. It says if Hamas delays or rejects the deal, the aid scale up and the rest of the plan just proceed anyway, but only in areas considered terror-free that are handed over to the ISF.
So it moves forward regardless, focusing on secured areas.
That seems to be the idea. The train leaves the station, essentially.
Okay, finally, the big picture. Palestinian statehood. Points 19 and 20 touch on this, calling it an aspiration. But there's a major but, isn't there?
A huge but. Statehood is framed as an aspiration only achievable once the Palestinian Authority completes a reform program and does so faithfully.
Right, so it links statehood directly to PA reform.
Exactly. And this really brings us to the core question, the thing for you, the listener, to really think about. You've got these immediate, very strict demands, total demilitarization, destruction of infrastructure, this powerful ISF on the ground, international oversight.
Right, very hands-on international involvement.
How does that transition, how do you get from that level of intense conditional control to genuine independent Palestinian self-determination down the road? That conditionality, that link between the immediate security demands and the long-term political horizon. That's the real tension at the heart of this proposal.